The old Honda Civic coughed as Lisa turned off the engine in the parking lot of Iron Wolf Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu Academy. She sat there for a moment, staring at the intimidating building through her windshield. The place looked serious, all black, walls with tinted windows and a sign that screamed professional athletics. This wasn't some community center karate class. This was the real deal. Her hands were sweating as she gripped the steering wheel. What was she even doing here? A 42-year-old librarian walking into a gym full of fighters? The whole idea seemed crazy now that she was actually here, but her daughter Kate had been so insistent. "Mom, you need to do something for yourself for once," she'd said just last week. "You've spent your whole life taking care of everyone else." Lisa checked her reflection in the rearview mirror one more time. Her brown hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, and she wore an old oversized t-shirt from her daughter's high school and black yoga pants that had seen better days. She looked exactly like what she was, a tired single mom trying something completely outside her comfort zone. The moment she stepped through the front doors, the sound hit her first. The thud of bodies hitting mats, the shuffle of feet moving across the floor, and the occasional grunt of effort. The smell was next. That mixture of sweat, rubber mats, and something she couldn't quite identify, but somehow felt familiar. The walls were covered with tournament photos, championship belts, and newspaper clippings celebrating the gym's success stories. At the front desk, a young woman with multiple tattoos and muscular arms looked up from her computer. "First time?" she asked with a friendly smile that made Lisa feel slightly less out of place. "Yes, I called yesterday about the trial class," Lisa replied, her voice smaller than she intended. "Perfect. Coach Williams will be with you in just a minute. You can grab some water from the cooler over there if you need it." As Lisa waited, she couldn't help but watch the evening class wrapping up on the main mat. These people moved like athletes, fluid, confident, powerful. A tall man with a black belt around his waist was demonstrating a technique to a group of advanced students. His movements were precise and effortless, like he was born doing this stuff. "That's our head instructor," the receptionist mentioned, noticing Lisa's gaze. "He's trained some serious competitors. 3 of our guys just won gold at the state championships last month." Lisa nodded, feeling more intimidated by the second. What had she gotten herself into? Near the water cooler, she overheard a conversation between 2 guys who looked like they could bench press her car. The first one, a stocky guy with a buzz cut, was talking loudly enough for half the gym to hear. "Did you see that new person? Signed up for beginner classes?" he said, toweling off his shaved head. "Some lady in her 40s, come on, what's next? Are we going to start teaching senior citizens?" His training partner, a lanky guy with tattoos covering both arms, laughed. "Dude, you're terrible. Maybe she's trying to get in shape or something." "Get in shape at Planet Fitness, not here," Buzzcut replied. "This is a serious gym. We train fighters here, not soccer moms looking for their next hobby." Lisa pretended to read the nutrition posters on the wall, but every word stung. She'd barely walked through the door and already felt like she didn't belong. Part of her wanted to turn around and leave right then, but something kept her feet planted. "You must be Lisa." A warm voice interrupted her thoughts. Coach Williams approached with an welcoming smile. He was probably in his late 30s, with graying temples and the calm confidence of someone who'd been doing this for years. "Ready to give jiu-jitsu a try?" "I think so," Lisa managed, though her voice betrayed her uncertainty. "Don't worry about thinking too much. We'll start with the basics and see how you feel. Everyone starts somewhere, and I've been teaching beginners for over 15 years. You're in good hands." As they walked toward the mats, Lisa noticed more stares from the other students. Some were curious, others seemed amused. The buzzcut guy from earlier caught her eye and nudged his friend, both of them barely containing their laughter. "Ignore them," Coach Williams said quietly, having noticed the exchange. "Every gym has a few guys who think they own the place. They'll come around once they see you're serious about learning." The beginner class was smaller than the advanced session that had just finished. About 8 people, mostly younger guys in their 20s and 30s, with a couple of women around, Lisa's age. That made her feel slightly better, though the other women looked like they actually belonged in a gym. "All right, everyone, let's start with some basic movement," Coach Williams called out. "Lisa, just follow along and don't worry if you don't get everything right away." Nobody expects perfection on day one. The warm-up was harder than Lisa expected. They did something called shrimping, sliding backward on their sides while keeping their knees up. It looked simple when the instructor demonstrated it, but Lisa felt clumsy and uncoordinated. Her hip flexors weren't used to this kind of movement, and she found herself breathing harder than everyone else. During partner drills, she was paired with Dave, a friendly guy who worked in IT and had been training for about 6 months. He was patient and encouraging, but Lisa could tell she was holding him back. Every technique felt awkward in her body. When the instructor showed them how to escape from someone holding them down, Lisa's movements were stiff and mechanical compared to the flowing motions of the other students. "You're thinking too much," Dave offered helpfully during a water break. "Try to relax and let your body move naturally." Easy for him to say. Nothing about this felt natural to Lisa. She was used to sitting at a desk, organizing books, and helping. Kids find reading materials. Her body wasn't designed for rolling around on mats and learning how to tie people up in knots. The worst part came during the last drill of class. They practiced something called guard passing, where one person lies on their back and tries to control the other person with their legs. When it was Lisa's turn to be on bottom, everything went wrong at once. She couldn't coordinate her hands and feet. Her timing was completely off, and she ended up in awkward positions that left her feeling exposed and foolish. From across the mat, she could hear Buzzcut talking to his friends who had stayed to watch the beginner class. "This is painful to watch," he said, not even trying to lower his voice. "She's going to hurt herself or someone else. Why doesn't Coach just tell her this isn't for her?" Lisa's cheeks burned with embarrassment. She wanted to disappear into the mat. During the final cool-down and stretching, she barely made eye contact with anyone. Coach Williams thanked everyone for coming and reminded them about the next class, but Lisa was already planning her escape. As she gathered her water bottle and car keys, Coach Williams approached her one more time. "How did that feel for your first class?" "Harder than I expected," Lisa admitted honestly. "I'm not sure I'm cut out for this." "Nobody feels cut out for it at first," he replied with a knowing smile. "I've seen thousands of people walk through those doors. The ones who succeed aren't necessarily the most athletic or the strongest. They're the ones who keep showing up even when it feels impossible. Think about it. And if you decide to come back, we'd be happy to have you." Walking to her car, Lisa felt a mix of emotions she couldn't quite sort out. Embarrassment, certainly. Frustration at her own clumsiness. But underneath it all, something else was stirring. Something that felt almost like determination. The comments from that obnoxious guy had stung, but they'd also lit a small fire inside her. As she drove home through the quiet suburban streets, Lisa found herself thinking about Kate's words again. Maybe it was time to do something for herself, even if it meant being uncomfortable for a while, even if it meant being the worst person in the room, even if it meant proving wrong every person who looked at her and saw just another middle-aged woman who didn't belong. That night, Lisa sat in her small kitchen drinking chamomile tea and trying to process what had happened at the gym. Her body ached in places she'd forgotten existed, and her pride was still bruised from the afternoon's humiliation. She almost wanted to laugh at herself, a 42-year-old librarian thinking she could waltz into a fighter's gym and fit right in. But as she rubbed her sore shoulders, something unexpected happened. Her hands moved in a way that felt oddly familiar, working out the knots with a precision that surprised her. For just a moment, muscle memory flickered to life. The memory of countless post-training recovery sessions from what felt like another lifetime. Kate wandered into the kitchen, still in her pajamas despite it being nearly 10 at night. At 16, her daughter had inherited Lisa's determination, but thankfully not her tendency to overthink everything. She grabbed a glass of water and sat across from her mom at the small wooden table they'd bought at a garage sale years ago. "So how was your first martial arts class?" Kate asked, genuinely curious. "Did you throw anyone around?" Lisa laughed, despite herself. "More like I got thrown around. I think I was the worst person there by a pretty wide margin." "That's normal though, right? I mean, you can't expect to be good at something on your first day." If only Kate knew the truth. If only she knew that 23 years ago her mother had been Sofia Santos, a name whispered with respect in the underground jiu-jitsu scene of São Paulo. Back then she was 19 years old and training under Master Roberto Silva, one of the most respected instructors in Brazil. She'd earned her blue belt faster than anyone in her academy's history and was being groomed for competition at the highest levels. Lisa closed her eyes and could almost smell the familiar scent of the old gym in Brazil, that mixture of sweat, eucalyptus oil, and the sea breeze that drifted through the open windows. Master Silva used to call her Tempestade Silenciosa, silent storm, because she had this ability to end matches so quickly and quietly that opponents barely realized what had happened until they were already tapping out. She'd been obsessed. Back then, training twice a day and studying technique videos until her eyes burned. Her specialty was submissions, particularly arm locks and chokes that she could apply from positions that seemed impossible. Other students would joke that she could probably submit someone while tied up in a straitjacket. The joke wasn't far from the truth. The memories felt surreal now, sitting in her modest American kitchen in suburban clothes that smelled like fabric softener instead of training gear. Back in São Paulo, she'd been living in a tiny apartment, above a bakery, spending every real she earned on training fees and tournament entry costs. Her parents thought she was crazy. Their daughter, who'd been accepted to study literature at the university, choosing to roll around on mats with sweaty strangers instead. But Master Silva saw something special in her. "You have the mind of a chess player and the instincts of a predator," he used to tell her. "That combination is very rare. Most people have one or the other, but never both." Everything changed the night her father called from the hospital. He'd suffered a massive stroke while working his night shift at the factory. The doctors weren't sure if he'd ever walk again, and her mother was falling apart trying to handle everything alone. Lisa, Sofia back then, caught the first flight home and never looked back. The next few years were a blur of hospitals, physical therapy appointments, and working multiple jobs to keep the family afloat. Her father did recover, mostly, but he was never the same. Her mother needed constant support, both emotional and financial. When Lisa met Michael at a coffee shop near the hospital where her father was getting treatment, marriage seemed like a practical solution to an impossible situation. Michael was a kind man from Ohio who was visiting Brazil for work. He offered stability, a chance to start fresh in America, and most importantly, health insurance that could help with her father's ongoing medical needs. It wasn't a passionate love story, but it was real and it was what her family needed. The move to America meant leaving everything behind: her training, her friends, her dreams of competition, and most painfully, Master Silva, who had become like a second father to her. On her last day at the academy, he'd given her a photo of their training group and written something on the back that she still remembered word for word. "A true fighter never loses their spirit, no matter how far they travel or how long they stay away." Kate was born 2 years after the wedding, and everything else faded into the background. Lisa threw herself into motherhood with the same intensity she'd once brought to training. When Kate was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes at age 8, managing her condition became Lisa's full-time job on top of everything else. Michael tried to be supportive, but the stress of constant medical appointments, insurance battles, and sleepless nights monitoring Kate's blood sugar levels took its toll on their marriage. He wasn't a bad person, just not equipped to handle the intensity of their situation. When he finally asked for a divorce, Lisa wasn't even surprised. She was too exhausted to fight for something that had been failing for years. Single motherhood meant no time for hobbies, dreams, or anything that didn't directly contribute to keeping Kate healthy and their household running. Lisa took the job at the elementary school library because the hours worked with Kate's school schedule, and the health insurance was decent. It wasn't glamorous, but it was stable. The old photos from Brazil were tucked away in a shoebox under her bed, along with a few tournament medals and her worn blue belt. Sometimes late at night when Kate was asleep, Lisa would take them out and remember who she used to be. The girl in those photos looked so young and confident, like she could take on the world. Lisa barely recognized her anymore. But sometimes, in unexpected moments, traces of Sofia would surface. Like when Lisa had to break up a fight between two sixth graders at the library. Her body had moved instinctively, positioning herself perfectly to separate them without anyone getting hurt. The kids were shocked at how easily she'd handled the situation, and Lisa had been surprised too. Or the time a man had followed her to her car after work one evening. Without thinking, Lisa had shifted her stance and turned to face him in a way that apparently made him reconsider whatever he'd been planning. He'd walked away quickly, and Lisa had stood there in the parking lot wondering where that confidence had come from. The muscle memory was still there, buried under years of routine and responsibility. Sometimes she'd catch herself moving her hands in the patterns of old techniques while she was doing mundane tasks like folding laundry or organizing books. Her body remembered things her mind tried to forget. Kate's encouragement to join the jiu-jitsu class had stirred up feelings Lisa thought she'd successfully buried. Watching those students move on the mats had been like looking through a window into her past life. Part of her wanted to run away from those memories, but another part, the part that used to be Sofia Santos, was quietly waking up after a very long sleep. Sitting in her kitchen that night, Lisa made a decision that surprised even her. She was going back to that gym, not because she expected to reclaim her former glory, but because something inside her needed to know if any trace of the silent storm still existed. After 23 years of being someone else, maybe it was time to find out who she really was underneath all the layers of responsibility and compromise. Kate noticed her mom's thoughtful expression and reached across the table to squeeze her hand. "You know what, Mom? I think you should keep going to those classes. You looked different when you came home today." "Different how?" "I don't know exactly. Just more like yourself, if that makes sense." Lisa smiled at her daughter, wondering if Kate had inherited more than just her determination. Maybe she'd inherited some intuition too. Lisa walked into Iron Wolf Academy for her third class with a mix of determination and dread. The first 2 sessions had been rough, but she'd managed to show up anyway. Coach Williams had been encouraging, telling her that improvement takes time and that everyone progresses at their own pace. What he didn't see was what happened when he wasn't looking directly at her section of the mat. The buzz-cut guy, she'd learned his name was Tyler, had made it his personal mission to make her feel unwelcome. It started small during her second class. When they were practicing partner drills and she was struggling with a basic escape technique, Tyler had loudly announced to his training partner, "Man, some people just aren't built for this stuff. It's painful to watch." His friend Jake, the tall guy with tattoos, had laughed and added, "Maybe she should try yoga instead. This is getting embarrassing." Lisa had pretended not to hear, but her cheeks burned as she fumbled through the technique. Again. Dave, her usual partner, had given her an apologetic look but didn't say anything to defend her. She couldn't blame him. Tyler was one of the gym's star students, and Dave was still relatively new himself. By her 4th class, the comments were getting bolder. Tyler started positioning himself where he could make observations about her performance, just loud enough for others to hear. "Check out that guard position," he'd say during rolling sessions. "That's not jiu-jitsu, that's just flailing around." The worst part was that other students were starting to join in. Not everyone. Most people ignored her completely or were politely neutral. But Tyler's inner circle of 3 or 4 guys began treating her like entertainment. They'd exchange glances and barely contained smirks whenever she struggled with a technique, which was often. During her 5th class, things escalated to a new level. Coach Williams had to step out to take a phone call, leaving the advanced students to run drilling practice. Tyler immediately volunteered to help demonstrate techniques on the beginners, and somehow Lisa kept ending up as his demonstration partner. "All right, for this escape you need to create space first," Tyler explained to the group using Lisa as his practice dummy. But when he showed the technique, he applied more pressure than necessary, grinding his shoulder into her ribs in a way that left her gasping. "See how she's not framing properly? That's why this doesn't work." When Lisa tried to follow his instruction, Tyler would interrupt. No, you're doing it all wrong. Here, let me show everyone what not to do." Then he'd put her in the same position again, this time holding it longer than needed while pointing out every mistake in her form. The other students watched uncomfortably. A few newer people looked sympathetic, but nobody spoke up. Tyler was a brown belt with several tournament wins under his belt. Lisa was just some random lady who'd shown up a few weeks ago and clearly didn't belong. After class that day, Lisa sat in her car for 10 minutes before starting the engine. Her ribs ached, where Tyler had been unnecessarily rough, and her confidence was completely shattered. She'd started to think maybe she was making progress, but Tyler's public breakdown of everything she was doing wrong made her feel like she was back at square one. The breaking point came during her 7th class. Coach Williams was working with the competition team in a separate area, leaving Tyler and his friends to supervise the regular training. They'd convinced him to let them film some technique demonstrations for the gym's social media accounts. "Hey Lisa," Tyler called out with fake friendliness. "Want to help us show everyone the right way to defend against a Kimura? You can be the example of what beginners typically do wrong." Lisa's stomach dropped, but she found herself nodding. What else could she do? Refusing would just draw more attention and make her look difficult. Tyler positioned her arms and explained the technique to the camera, but instead of showing the defense, he focused on demonstrating everything she was doing incorrectly. "See how her elbow is in the wrong position? This is super common with people who don't have any real training background. And watch what happens when she tries to resist." He applied the technique slowly, but with increasing pressure, holding her arm in an uncomfortable position while continuing his commentary. "Now she's making it worse by trying to muscle out of it. This is exactly why fundamentals matter. You can't just show up and expect to understand this stuff without putting in the real work." Lisa felt trapped and humiliated. The camera was recording her looking helpless and awkward, while Tyler positioned himself as the expert instructor. She could see other students watching, some looking uncomfortable, but none willing to intervene. When he finally released the technique, Lisa's shoulder was sore and her face was red with embarrassment. Tyler smiled at the camera. "That's why we always tell people to master the basics first. Trying to skip steps just makes everything harder." After they stopped recording, Jake high-fived Tyler. "Dude, that was perfect. Should we post it tonight?" "Maybe. Edit it a bit first," Tyler replied, glancing at Lisa, who was still sitting on the mat rubbing her shoulder. "We want to be educational, not mean." But Lisa had heard the laughter in their voices. This wasn't about education. It was about entertainment at her expense. The video appeared on the gym's Instagram story that night with the caption, "Common mistakes beginners make. Coach Tyler breaks down why fundamentals matter." Jiu-Jitsu. Or technique. Basics. Lisa's face was clearly visible, looking confused and helpless as Tyler manipulated her into various incorrect positions. Kate found her mom crying in the kitchen around midnight, scrolling through social media on her phone. "Mom."
"What's wrong?"
Kate asked, immediately concerned. Lisa showed her the video without saying anything. Kate watched it twice, her expression growing darker each time. "This is bullying," Kate said flatly. "That guy is being a complete jerk to you on purpose." "He's not wrong, though," Lisa replied, wiping her eyes. "I'm doing everything incorrectly. I don't belong there. That's not the point, Mom. Even if you're learning, there's no reason to embarrass you like this. And posting it online, that's just cruel." Lisa had been thinking the same thing, but hearing Kate say it out loud made it feel more real. This wasn't just tough love or legitimate instruction. Tyler was deliberately making her the target of his jokes, and now it was spreading beyond the gym. By the next morning, the video had dozens of views and several comments. Most were neutral or supportive of the gym's teaching methods, but a few made jokes about weekend warriors and people who watch too much UFC and think they can fight. Lisa almost didn't go to her next class. She sat in the parking lot for 15 minutes, engine running, ready to drive away and never come back. The rational part of her brain was screaming that this wasn't worth the humiliation. She could find other ways to exercise, other activities that didn't involve being the laughingstock of a room full of athletes. But something kept her from putting the car in reverse. Maybe it was stubbornness, or maybe it was the memory of Kate's angry defense of her the night before. Or maybe it was something deeper, a tiny spark of the person she used to be, the person who never backed down from a challenge. Lisa turned off the engine and walked into the gym. Tyler and his friends were already warming up, and she caught them glancing in her direction with barely concealed amusement. She could practically hear them planning their next source of entertainment. As she changed into her training clothes, Lisa made a quiet decision. She couldn't control how they treated her, but she could control how she responded. Instead of leaving early or making excuses to avoid difficult drills, she was going to start staying after regular classes to practice on her own. If Tyler wanted to make her look foolish, fine. But she wasn't going to make it easy for him anymore. Something was stirring inside her. Call it pride, call it determination, or call it the ghost of Sofia Santos refusing to be completely buried. The girl who used to be called Silent Storm was still in there somewhere, and she was getting tired of being quiet. 3 weeks had passed since the humiliating video incident, and Lisa had developed a routine. She'd arrive for regular class, endure whatever comments Tyler and his crew threw her way, then stay after everyone left to practice alone on the mats. Coach Williams had noticed her dedication and started leaving the gym open an extra hour just for her. During those quiet evening sessions, something strange was happening. Without the pressure of other people watching and judging, Lisa's body began to remember things her mind had forgotten. Simple movements started feeling less awkward. Her balance improved. Most surprisingly, she found herself flowing between positions in ways that surprised even her. One evening, while practicing basic escapes by herself, Lisa had transitioned from a defensive position into what she realized was the setup for an armbar, a submission she hadn't thought about in over 20 years. The movement had felt as natural as breathing, like her body had been waiting all this time to remember what it knew. She'd sat on the mat afterward, staring at her hands in amazement. How was muscle memory that old still so strong? It was like finding a photograph you thought you'd lost, suddenly appearing in perfect condition after decades of being buried. But during regular classes, Tyler's campaign against her had only intensified. He'd started calling her library lady in front of everyone, always with that fake friendly tone that made it seem like teasing between friends. His latest favorite trick was volunteering her for demonstrations when they practiced techniques that were clearly beyond her skill level. "Library lady can help us show this one," he'd announce, and Lisa would find herself being used as a practice dummy for advanced moves that left her sore and embarrassed. Tyler always framed it as being helpful. This is great practice for defending against higher belts, but everyone could see what was really happening. The other students had mostly gotten used to the dynamic. Some looked uncomfortable, others seemed entertained, but nobody intervened. Dave still partnered with her when possible and remained encouraging, but even he seemed to accept that Tyler's behavior was just part of the gym culture. Everything changed on a Friday evening when Coach Williams announced that the following week would be the gym's monthly open mat night. It was a tradition where students could engage in friendly sparring matches, test their skills against different opponents, and generally have fun in a less structured environment. Anyone can challenge anyone, Coach Williams explained to the group. It's all about learning and pushing yourself. Brown belts and above should go easy on newer students, but everyone's welcome to participate. Lisa was planning to skip the event entirely. The idea of voluntarily putting herself in situations where she'd be outmatched and probably humiliated seemed like unnecessary torture. She was making progress in her solo practice sessions, but she wasn't ready for any kind of competitive rolling. After the announcement, Tyler approached her with that familiar smirk. "Hey, library lady, you should definitely come to open mat night next week. It'll be fun." "I think I'll pass," Lisa replied, packing up her water bottle and towel. "Come on, don't be like that. You've been training for what, 2 months now? You should test your skills." Tyler's voice got louder, drawing attention from other students who were getting ready to leave. "I mean, how else are you going to know if all this practice is actually helping?" Jake and the rest of Tyler's crew had gathered around, sensing entertainment. "Yeah, you should totally do it," Jake added. "It's not about winning or losing, it's about the experience." Lisa felt trapped. Refusing in front of everyone would make her look scared, but accepting seemed like walking into an obvious setup. "I'm still pretty new to all this," she said carefully. "That's exactly why you should do it," Tyler pressed. "Look, I'll make you a deal. If you come to open mat night, I'll personally make sure you get matched up with someone appropriate for your skill level. No pressure, just some friendly rolling to see how you're progressing. The way he said, personally make sure sent warning bells off in Lisa's head. Tyler never did anything that didn't benefit him somehow, but now half the gym was listening, and backing down would just give him more ammunition for future harassment. Okay, Lisa heard herself saying. I'll be there. Tyler's grin widened. Awesome. This is going to be great. Really great opportunity for you to show everyone what you've learned. As Lisa walked to her car that night, she had a sinking feeling that she'd just agreed to participate in her own public execution. Tyler was clearly planning something, and whatever it was, wouldn't be in her favor. The week leading up to Open, Matt Knight felt like waiting for a dentist appointment she couldn't cancel. Lisa continued her solo practice sessions, but now they felt different. Instead of just working on basic movements, she found herself unconsciously preparing for something more challenging. Strange things kept happening during those practice sessions. She'd start working on a simple escape and somehow end up in positions that were far more advanced than anything they'd covered in class. Her hands seemed to know where to go before her brain caught up. Old combinations were surfacing from somewhere deep in her muscle memory. Kate noticed her mom's increased anxiety as the week progressed. "You know you don't have to do this, right?" she said over dinner Wednesday night. "If these people are being jerks to you, why put yourself through more of it?" "I already committed," Lisa replied. "Besides, maybe it'll be good for me. Push me out of my comfort zone." "Mom, your comfort zone left the building 2 months ago when you started doing martial arts in the first place. You don't need to prove anything to anyone." But Lisa wasn't sure she was trying to prove something to them. Maybe she was trying to prove something to herself. Friday arrived faster than Lisa wanted. She spent the day at work distracted, barely able to focus on helping students find books or organizing the new arrivals. Her colleagues noticed her nervousness, but assumed it was about some personal issue she didn't want to discuss. When she arrived at the gym that evening, the atmosphere was different, more energetic, more social. Students who usually left right after class had stuck around, and there were even some people Lisa had never seen before, apparently other martial artists from nearby gyms who came to these monthly events. Tyler spotted her immediately and bounded over with exaggerated enthusiasm. "Library lady, you made it. I was hoping you wouldn't chicken out." "I'm here," Lisa said simply, trying to keep her voice steady. "Great. So I've been thinking about this all week, and I have the perfect idea." Tyler's eyes were practically gleaming with anticipation. "How about you and I roll? I mean, you wanted to test your skills against someone experienced, right?" Lisa's stomach dropped. "I thought you said you'd match me with someone at my skill level." "Well, I am someone at your skill level, sort of. I mean, I'll take it super easy on you. Think of it as a learning experience. I can give you real-time feedback on your technique." Jake and the rest of Tyler's crew had materialized around them, all wearing barely contained grins. This was clearly the plan they'd been cooking up all week. "I don't think that's a good idea," Lisa started to say, but Tyler cut her off. "Come on, don't be scared. Everyone here knows I'm not going to hurt you. It's just light rolling. Besides, how else are you going to know if you're actually improving?" Other students were starting to notice the conversation. Some looked uncomfortable, clearly recognizing that this wasn't going to be a fair match. But others seemed curious about the spectacle. Coach Williams was across the room helping set up mats and hadn't noticed what was developing. Lisa realized she was completely on her own in this situation. "Fine," she said quietly, surprised by her own voice. "Let's do it." Tyler's grin became predatory. "Awesome. This is going to be so educational for everyone watching." As they walked toward an open section of mat, Lisa felt something shifting inside her. The nervous librarian who'd been enduring weeks of harassment was still there. But something else was stirring underneath. Something that had been sleeping for 23 years and was finally starting to wake up. Tyler began stretching ostentatiously, playing up the moment for his audience. "Don't worry, library lady, I'll go easy on you. Wouldn't want this to be over too quickly." Lisa said nothing. She simply sat on the edge of the mat and began to stretch, her movements becoming more fluid and purposeful than anyone had ever seen from her before. For the first time in months, she wasn't thinking about being embarrassed or out of place. She was thinking about technique. The gym had gone completely quiet. What started as casual conversation and warm-up drills had stopped as word spread that Tyler was about to roll with the library lady. Students gathered around the mat in a loose circle, some sitting cross-legged, others standing with their arms folded. A few people had their phones out, clearly expecting to capture something worth sharing later. Lisa sat at the edge of the mat, still stretching, but something had changed in her posture. The nervous energy that usually surrounded her was gone, replaced by a stillness that was almost eerie. She moved through her stretches with a precision that nobody had seen from her before, fluid motions that looked less like a beginner warming up and more like a predator preparing to hunt. Tyler was playing to his audience, making jokes and predictions about how quickly the match would be over. "I'm thinking maybe 30 seconds, he announced to his friends. "Gotta give her a chance to at least try something before I finish it." Jake was recording on his phone. "Dude, this is going to be hilarious. Should I post it live or wait and edit it first?" "Let's see how good the footage is," Tyler replied, rolling his shoulders and cracking his neck. "Don't want to waste good content." Coach Williams had noticed the crowd gathering and walked over to see what was happening. When he realized what was about to take place, his expression shifted to concern. "Tyler, I'm not sure this is a good idea. The skill gap here is pretty significant." "It's fine, Coach," Tyler assured him. "I'll take it easy. Think of it as a teaching moment. She wanted to test her skills, right?" Lisa stood up from her stretching, and for the first time since joining the gym, she looked directly at Tyler without any trace of nervousness or uncertainty. "I'm ready whenever you are." Something in her voice made Coach Williams take a closer look at her. There was a quality to her movement, a way she carried herself that he hadn't noticed before. She walked to the center of the mat with the confidence of someone who belonged there, not like the hesitant beginner he'd been working with for 2 months. "Okay," Coach Williams said slowly. "Keep it light, Tyler. This is supposed to be fun for everyone." Tyler nodded, but his attention was focused on Lisa, who had dropped into a fighting stance that looked surprisingly natural. For just a moment, doubt flickered across his face. Something about her positioning looked professional. They touched, hands in the traditional show of respect before sparring, and Tyler immediately went for an aggressive takedown. He'd planned to overwhelm her quickly with his superior size and strength, get her on the ground in a dominant position, and then play with her for the entertainment of the crowd. But as he lunged forward, Lisa wasn't where he expected her to be. She had sidestepped with a smoothness that seemed to defy physics, using his own momentum against him. Tyler found himself off balance, reaching for air where Lisa had been standing a split second before. Before he could recover, he felt her hands on his arm, guiding his motion in a direction he definitely didn't want to go. The entire sequence happened so fast that most of the watching students didn't immediately understand what they'd seen. One moment Tyler was attacking confidently. The next he was flat on his back with Lisa controlling his arm in what was unmistakably the setup for a textbook armbar. Tyler's eyes went wide with shock and sudden fear. This wasn't possible. The nervous library lady who couldn't execute a basic escape 2 months ago had just countered his takedown like she'd been training for decades. The pressure on his arm was precise and controlled, applied with the kind of technical knowledge that took years to develop. He tried to defend, using the standard escapes he'd learned, but Lisa anticipated every movement. Her transitions were seamless, flowing from one controlling position to another like water finding the path of least resistance. When he attempted to roll out of the armbar, she smoothly switched to a triangle choke, her legs wrapping around his neck with mechanical precision. The crowd had gone from excited chatter to stunned silence. Nobody was making jokes anymore. Tyler's face was beginning to turn red as the choke tightened, and his earlier confidence had completely evaporated into panic. He tapped frantically against Lisa's leg, the universal signal of submission in martial arts. The moment he did, Lisa released the hold immediately and calmly moved away from him, standing up with the same fluid grace she'd shown throughout the entire exchange. Tyler rolled onto his side, gasping and rubbing his neck, staring up at Lisa. With a mixture of shock, confusion, and something that might have been fear. The entire match had lasted exactly 10 seconds from the opening touch of hands to his desperate tap-out. The gym remained silent for what felt like an eternity. Jake's phone was still recording, but he'd lowered it slightly, his mouth hanging open. Coach Williams was staring at Lisa with an expression of growing recognition, like he was seeing her clearly for the first time. "What the hell was that?" Tyler finally managed to croak out, still sitting on the mat. Lisa looked down at him with calm eyes that held no trace of malice or triumph. "That was jiu-jitsu," she said simply. Coach Williams stepped onto the mat, his mind racing as he replayed what he'd just witnessed. The timing, the technique, the absolute smoothness of her transitions. This wasn't beginner's luck or natural talent. This was the work of someone with serious training. "Lisa," he said carefully, "where exactly did you learn to do that?" The question hung in the air like a challenge. Lisa looked around at the circle of stunned faces, at Tyler still struggling to process what had happened to him, at the phones that had captured his humiliation, and made a decision that would change everything. "My name isn't really Lisa," she said, her voice carrying clearly through the silent gym. "Well, it is now. But 23 years ago I was Sofia Santos. I trained under Master Roberto Silva in Sao Paulo, and they used to call me Tempestade Silenciosa, Silent Storm." Coach Williams' eyes widened with recognition. He'd heard that name before, whispered in the underground jiu-jitsu community as one of the most promising female fighters Brazil had ever produced. A prodigy who had disappeared from competition just when she was hitting her peak. "You're Sofia Santos?" he breathed. "But you vanished. Nobody knew what happened to you." "Life happened," Lisa replied simply. "My father got sick. I moved to America, got married, had a daughter. I put that part of my life away because other things were more important." Tyler was finally getting to his feet, his face a mixture of embarrassment and dawning understanding. "You've been pretending to be a beginner this whole time?" "I wasn't pretending," Lisa said, looking directly at him. "I hadn't trained in over 20 years. I really was struggling with basic techniques when I started here. Everything you saw in those first few weeks was real." She paused, glancing around, at the assembled students who were hanging on every word. "But you kept pushing and pushing, making me your entertainment, treating me like I was worthless. So I started practicing alone, trying to remember who I used to be. Turns out some things never really leave you." Jake, who had stopped recording sometime during Lisa's explanation, asked the question everyone was thinking. "So you could have shut down Tyler any time you wanted?" Lisa shook her head. "Not any time. A month ago? Probably not. 2 weeks ago? Maybe. But tonight?" She looked at Tyler, who was still processing the magnitude of his miscalculation. "Tonight I remembered something important about myself." Coach Williams was studying her with new eyes, seeing past the unassuming exterior to the fighter underneath. "Would you be interested in teaching some classes? We could use someone with your background working with our female students." "I might be," Lisa said, a small smile playing at the corners of her mouth for the first time since joining the gym. "But first, I think Tyler and I need to have a conversation about respect." Tyler nodded vigorously, all his earlier arrogance completely gone. "Yeah, absolutely. Lisa, Sofia, I'm really sorry. I was completely out of line." "Just Lisa is fine," she corrected gently. "Sofia was a different person in a different life, but she's still part of who I am." The crowd began to disperse slowly, students heading to the locker rooms with plenty to talk about. Jake deleted the video he'd been planning to post, suddenly understanding that what he'd witnessed wasn't entertainment. It was a lesson in humility that he'd never forget. As Lisa gathered her things, Coach Williams approached her one more time. "You know, there's a tournament coming up next month, Masters Division. If you're interested in getting back into competition." Lisa considered the offer for a moment, then smiled. "Let me think about it. I've got a daughter to check with first. She's been my biggest supporter through all of this." Walking to her car that night, Lisa felt lighter than she had in years, not because she'd embarrassed Tyler, though he'd certainly earned it, but because she'd found a piece of herself she thought was lost forever. She was still Lisa the librarian and Lisa the mom, but now she was also Sophia the fighter again. And that felt pretty good.